Welcome back to the Third Man podcast. Today, we're joined by a very, very special guest, none other than Mr. Jarrod Kimber himself. Jarrod Kimber is one of the leading cricket writers and analysts in the world. He came to prominence as the founder of the Cricket with Balls blog, before working as editor of the Spin magazine and currently as a writer with ESPN Cricinfo. He has written over 5 books on cricket, and he's been an analyst for various professional teams, including the Scotland national team and the St Lucia Stars. He also has a brilliant YouTube channel, which we are both big fans of, and it covers the analytical side of cricket. And we're extremely pleased to have him on the show. And a big welcome to you, Mr. Kimber. Great to have you.
You do not have to call me Mr. Kimber. I promise. Even my dad wasn't a Mr. Kimber. I'm certainly not a Mr. Kimber.
Okay, so let's get straight into the questions. So the first question we had with you was, we'll get to the cricket later. Our main question is, how did a photo of yours end up becoming P Diddy's album cover? Where is the parallel?
As a commentator, a cricket journalist, as a writer, how are you making a P Diddy album cover?
Yeah, no, that is weird. I went on holiday with my wife to the Pompidou Center. We went to Paris. We went to the Pompidou Center, and I love photography. I'm not particularly good at it. I'm very good at framing, but I'm very good at light and understanding the camera. But framing's always been my big thing. And I went up and down this escalator in the Pompidou Center about 8 times to get the framing that I wanted for this photo. Anyway, it wasn't like I did anything with it. I didn't print it up or anything. I still don't have a printed version of this photo anyway. Essentially, what I did was I just put it on a blog that I was writing, which was about moving to London.
Yep.
And I don't know how anyone found it, but essentially someone involved with P Diddy found the photo. And I think it might have been the original designer. And he put up this photo on a mood board. Like when they're coming up with an album, they come up with like, all these different things, bang, bang, bang. And he showed it to P Diddy. P Diddy's like, yeah, that's the photo. That's the cover. And they're like, no. This is like just a little photo from this blog. And he's like, no, that's the cover. And sorry, Siri's trying to talk to me for some reason. And I didn't know any of this, and I had been contacted by Sony over and over and over again. And I was like, I must have just broken a copyright law. Well, I'm not going to get back to them because I've probably just done something dodgy. Yeah. And then I got an email from the A&R person at Interscope, and I knew enough about music and Interscope to be like, she doesn't care that I've fucked up a copyright law, right? She's like, and so she said, look, can I call you straight away and I'll explain what all this is. And she basically said, look, he loves your photo. And I was like, it's this big. Like, I didn't even have the original file left. Yeah. And I did like the photo. I thought it was a decent photo, but I didn't think it was like the best photo I've ever, it's not the best 100 photos I've ever taken. So I wasn't really like proud of it. And so they were just like, look, it's going to cost us a lot of money to blow this up, because I had to get it to billboard side. And it was literally like, it was so small. So I think they ended up digitally recreating it to make it big for billboards and things.
Yeah.
And they gave me a bunch of money. And I was supposed to meet P Diddy, because I think the whole album is a concept album about him traveling from London to Paris.
Yep.
On train. It's supposed to be a train station, even though my photos of the Pompidou Center are not a train station at all, but it looks like a train station, I suppose. And I never got to meet him. I don't think he had the big launch. I think the album might have flopped a little bit. Someone made a video essay about it recently saying it was one of his masterpieces, but it didn't sell many copies at the time and didn't go very far. So nothing really came of it other than the fact that it's on my Wikipedia page. And for a little while, like, MTV were writing articles about me, and so it was a random buzz. The funniest thing about it is, I think it's on one of the letters you can actually see my wife. So my wife's on the cover of a P Diddy cover, which is pretty cool. Completely by accident, because I just went up and down the escalator about 8 times until I got the photo right. I had no idea she was in the background.
But the features on that album are also incredible, and it's just a picture you took on an escalator on a vacation in France. That's incredible.
Yeah. Like, your Wikipedia says, cricket writer, journalist, writer for Cricinfo, and then just P Diddy's album cover, and we were both just like, how? Very, very...
Drops mic, leaves the room. Yeah. No, it's just weird. The whole thing it doesn't get any less, like when people ask the story, I think they think it would be more normal, but it's actually far more weird. And the actual piece, it was about, I remember I think the title was something like All Blacks Take Over the Pompidou Center or something like that, because like I'm going around the Pompidou Center and there was a whole wall of like vagina art or something, right? And then as I come around the corner, there's a guy in an All Blacks jersey from New Zealand. And I was like writing, that's what the title is about. And all I could think of was like P Diddy trying to understand what the fuck I am talking about in this. I'm sure he never found the actual blog, but yeah, the whole thing was very weird. That's fair to say.
That's
yeah,
incredible.
definitely a little, little weird, but also.
I mean, you
great
talk
story.
about you don't take photos that much, but you're a film major. You've made films for cricket. You've made films outside of
So
cricket.
yeah.
So you have that creative artistic talent. How did you reach from a filmmaker to a cricket writer to a journalist? How did that transition happen?
So I went to film school quite late in life. I was about 26, and at that stage I'd made a couple of shorts, but I didn't really know what to do with them. I didn't really understand the industry, if we're being honest.
Yep.
And so I went to film school as much as anything to meet other people. So all my films were made on my own.
Yep.
And they were fun, but they were very limited because of that. And I went to film school and I met a bunch of people, and from that we formed a film company, 3 of us, and we just couldn't get consistent work. Is the base thing. I really wanted to be a screenwriter. I think one of my friends really wanted to be sound designer and editor, and my other friend really wanted to be a director. So we kind of complemented each other quite well, but we just had trouble finding people to understand what we were doing. To be honest, we actually started a startup idea that was probably TikTok before TikTok, if we're being honest, without probably the tech savvy, but the idea was really similar to TikTok. In fact, it was almost like a combination of like TikTok and The Athletic, in that it was hyper city based. So everything would be, so you would have like, I can't remember, what was it called? Was it called Fat Donut? I think it was called Fat Donut. Oh God, I can't remember. I can't believe I probably got the t-shirt somewhere.
Yeah.
And yeah, you would have Fat Donut Melbourne, Fat Donut Chennai, Fat Donut Cape Town. And the idea was that everyone would go out with, because this is when mobile phones were just getting video, right?
Yeah.
Everyone would go out and film like a little documentary on this part of town and on your part of town or whatever. And it would grow up and it would be a social media space with video.
Yeah.
We had the ideas. What we didn't have was sorry.
I'd say the Fat Donut has a better ring to it than TikTok, in my opinion.
Definitely.
Oh yeah, obviously. I mean, it was great. I can't remember why it was called Fat Donut, but we liked it. It had a little logo with sunglasses. It was pretty much, I think it was just after Bebo. Probably, you know what? It would have been within about a year of YouTube coming on board. So that's how early it was. And we couldn't sell it to anyone because no one knew what the fuck we were talking about. Right?
I think
Like,
it's
it didn't
all
make any
before
sense.
we were born.
Yeah, I think maybe a lot.
Yeah. Yeah, you guys would have. I went to film
2005
school the year that you guys were born, so it would have been. You guys would have been about 1 or 2 when this happened. And like trying to go into meetings with people who had money and explain to them what social media. They didn't know what Facebook was, right? And we were trying to explain TikTok.
Yeah.
And we didn't know. You know, Instagram didn't exist, right? None of these things existed. So you couldn't even say it's like this. We're like, no, you just have to trust us that we know what we're doing. And to be fair, we were right. It's just that we didn't know how to make that into a business.
Yeah.
And so we tried to do Fat Donut, and then we were doing advertising, some ads for places. Did a children's, like, no, maybe like a shed company. I did an ad for a shed company. We did a life-saving ad. I think I shot a music video for a Australian country music singer. Just like the random things that we could do, but it wasn't going anywhere. And when you run a film production company, especially when you're very early on, you get a bunch of money. Yeah. And then it disappears, and then you get a bunch of money and then it disappears. And so we're all like, we need second jobs. We need something to do that we can stop when we don't have to. My mate was an excellent barista, and he could go, Melbourne's a huge coffee place. Like baristas actually get paid a lot of money in Melbourne. So he was always going to get jobs. My other mate, I think he might have started doing wedding videos around that time, because I shot wedding videos as well. I would shoot school videos, like graduations and school performances. And I did a couple of weddings as well. And I think he went into that. And I was just like, look, guys, I'm just going to try cricket blogging, because at that stage, there's a lot of money in cricket blogging.
Yeah.
And I had a friend who was a basketball writer, and he would always get my assistance with how to write better blogs, because I'd written blogs before. Yeah. And he was just like, just write a cricket blog. And then, so I started that in late 2017. It must have been just after the World T20, or was it before the World T20? It was probably around the World T20 anyway. Yep. And within 3 to 4 months, it was probably the second, or maybe even the first biggest cricket blog in the world. No one, it just sort of took off. And then Australia India had their series in 2007 where everyone was being a dick, and I was the only one making fun of both sides, which actually worked really well. Everyone up until that point, you have to understand that cricket writing specifically, outside of a little bit of Cricinfo, was completely partisan. Indian people wrote for an Indian audience, Australian people wrote for an Australian audience. But that was the period where newspapers came online.
Yeah.
Right. And so you could literally go on and see Malcolm Conn's piece as an Indian fan and be like, this guy's an idiot.
Yeah.
Like, this is wrong. He's not even saying the right thing. And exactly the same, you know, with the Indian writers, you know, the same thing. You read Borea's column and just be like, this is nonsensical. If you're an Australian, this is just nonsense, right?
Yeah.
Not that I'm picking on those two men, but they were very partisan writers and very partisan media personalities at that point.
I'm pretty sure both of them are watching this podcast right now.
Definitely tuning in every week.
Oh, Conman's all over it. Borea will send me a WhatsApp in a minute complaining, I'm sure. But, you know, so I come in as a cricket fan first, which was just a thing that I happen to be, even though I love the Australian team, but I also love the Pakistan team. I probably love the Victorian team more than anything else, if being honest. But allowing me to make fun of Australians as an Australian was very big in Asia. But then also pointing out the nonsense of, I remember Anil Kumble was like, we're going to take the Australians' words on catches low to the ground. Why would you do that? We've got 100 years of proof of why you would not want to do that.
Yeah,
you know, don't be an idiot.
Incident just keeps running on.
And then the Harbhajan Singh pretending he didn't say what he probably said. You know, but also the Australians getting upset after decades of them sledging everyone.
Yeah,
right?
exactly.
The whole thing was just, it was made right for someone to make fun of it.
Yep.
And that's what I did, and that exploded the blog. It was already quite big, but it went to another level. And then within a couple of months, people in the UK were like, no one's ever done what you've done before. If you come to the UK, there's probably a career here for you. So off I went to the UK on a whim, because the film production company wasn't getting any bigger and it was starting to frustrate me. And I just sort of went at it from there and went, okay, what do I do that no one else does? Well, I'm going to keep doing this and see if it works.
Make fun of both sides.
Here we are. Yeah, where am I? What am I? 14 years later and I'm still here.
Yep, and you're doing extremely well at it. ESPN Cricinfo, lead writer. I mean,
I'm not with Cricinfo anymore, to be fair. I just do contract work for Cricinfo. So I left Cricinfo when I started working with teams. So I worked for Cricinfo up until 2018, and then I left for about a year, I think. Came back for about 8 or 9 months, and now I've got a contract with them, but I'm just a freelancer, really.
You're a freelancer, you're a cricket writer, one of the top cricket writers in the world. You have a YouTube channel, you do statistical analysis. So we can ask you a question, which is probably not easy to answer, right? There is a very famous quote by Sir Alex Ferguson, give me Zidane and 10 pieces of wood, I'll win you the Champions League. If you could choose one player in cricket in, say, T20 format, let's say T20 format, IPL is going on, who would this one player be?
Who you surround him with 10 absolute nobodies and he'd still win you.
Ben Dunk is a valid answer.
I think the easiest player to base your team around is, it is probably Rashid Khan. Because you can't, I think even as good as someone like Bumrah is, I don't think that because he has to be so good at the death, he's not having as an early in effect on the game as Rashid Khan is. If we had Shaheen Afridi, might be one of the others, just because his wickets at the top are so important, and that's really when you want to make the big hole in the opposition, right? But the thing about Rashid Khan is he can bowl in the first 10 or the last 10, depending on when you need. So he can put pressure on you early on, or you can hold him back the way Afghanistan do and literally use him as a deterrent. And if you look at the Afghanistan team, it's quite thin at times, and yet they're still quite successful because of him. So I think he's probably the most important. AB de Villiers probably would have been my choice and would still be my choice if he wanted to play as a batter.
Favorite player.
But
I think Rashid Khan also adds that bit with the bat, right? In the PSL,
we saw little bit. I mean, it's not enough to like tip the scales in his direction. But no one else has ever got. I mean, AB de Villiers and Viv Richards are probably the two best white ball batters we've ever seen. And players like someone like Andre Russell, who's obviously very talented. If Andre Russell, if the cartilage in his knees didn't disappear, and he could have still bowled at 90, 92 miles an hour like he did when I saw him when he was young, and was a better bowler back when he was young because he could actually run through the crease, and was the batter he was when he was slightly later, especially after he came back from the drugs ban. if you put those two players together, it's probably him over anyone else.
Yeah.
But by the time he was probably that good a batter, his bowling had already dropped off a little bit. I think it's probably fair. But yeah, I think Rashid Khan's probably the most. So there was a period where Sunrisers, Adelaide Strikers were consistent, and you could say Sussex as well, were just consistently good teams just because they had him. And it allowed you to do other things. Whereas I'm not sure AB de Villiers necessarily does that. Chris Gale never did that. Andre Russell, yes, but because he was never quite at his best. Jasper Brummer allows you to know that you're controlling the end of the game. Peak Mitchell Starc was really, really handy for Australia as well. But I think all in all, Rashid Khan is such a. I don't know how you kind of get past him consistently, right? Whereas with Jasper Brummer, it's like, okay, well, he's going to bowl a couple of overs up front. We'll knock those around for 6 and over. He probably won't get many wickets in the power play. And even if he does, it's not the end of the world. And then we can just smash everyone in the middle and attack the people at the other end. What Rashid Khan allows you to do is basically clamp a section of the game down. And I think if you have a look at the way that the IPL teams are running this year, it's really about clamping that middle down. So, you've got Chahal and Ashwin, you've got Hasaranga doing it for RCB, you've got Chakravarti and Narayan doing it, right? And that being able to control the 8 overs in the middle, but also with Rashid Khan, if it's going bad, you can move him back. And if it's going really bad, you can move him forward and he still gets the impact. So I go with him.
Not being biased at all, our answer as completely serious people is Devdutt Padikkal. He is from our city and he's our age.
And also,
he was second, if we're being honest.
And also, when you mentioned Mitchell Starc, my introduction in this podcast was I'm a Mitchell Starc lover. That was my introduction for a very long time. So I think Mitchell Starc.
I actually think that because we don't talk about cricket the right way, people see Mitchell Starc as not as a disappointment, but as a good average player, right? And it's like people have forgotten that he was the best bowler in 2 World Cups. And he was in that one time he turned up to the IPL fully fit and hungry. He was probably had the best season anyone's ever had in the IPL.
As an RCB fan, I watched him up close and personal, and then I watched him in the World Cup. And for me, he's the best I've ever seen.
He was right-handed. He bowls left arm pace now because of Mitchell Starc.
Well, I think that's fair. And that's right.
Okay, so moving on, you've worked with all these teams. You've worked with big names in the game. How do they take data? See, we saw Dhoni's interview at the end of the IPL last year. He said he doesn't really like to look at data. He likes to think with his mind. But then you did a video after that where you talked about like the data in his mind is also technically data which he's working off. So how do players react to, say, listening to analytical feedback on their game?
Yeah, I think the older players struggle with it because they've already got to their level without having it. And so they don't see how it will help them. The middle ground players are, the players coming through, so between 23 and 27, it probably is quite variable whether they accept it or not. Right? So it's probably a 50-50 split. Anyone under 23, to be honest, has probably played with an analyst already. And so it's part of their game. And also if you're hanging out with the coach and you're wearing the team kit and the coach is listening to you and coming to you for advice and everything, the younger players are naturally going to listen. They're just going to see you as an authority figure. Whereas that's not the case with Kieron Pollard, right? Like he's not going to see me that way because, he remembers me writing about him. Right. So it's a completely different relationship that we're going to have. I mean, Pollard's probably the best. I don't think I've ever really sat down and chatted to Dhoni. I'd be really interested to see how he goes. But when I talked to Pollard, I was saying that, look, there's a lot of information in my laptop. And CricViz have a lot of information. I said, but you also have that information. And the problem is that it's not coming out. Right. And so what we want is there's no point you knowing all this stuff and you not imparting it to the 18-year-olds, the 19-year-olds, even the 27-year-olds who are trying to make their way, right? And that's the big thing when people say, oh, I don't like that. It's just like, you can't watch Kieron Pollard or MS Dhoni. Joe Root's a perfect example. Joe Root plays like an algorithm. And I don't know how much of that is because he came through the English system and they were already more analyst dependent, but he plays like an algorithm. Like he's he only takes wickets against left-handers. When he bowls against right-handers, he bowls leg spinners, right? Like you go through the way he captains, the way he bats. It's so algorithmic. And a lot of these players, they've always done that.
Yeah.
Right. So if you look at KP was already fully formed before the analysis took over English cricket. I wouldn't think that he would ever say that analysis is that important to him. Right.
Yep.
But when you watch KP at his best, it was very, I'm trying to think of the best way of putting it. He knew exactly what he was doing. So when he would take a bowler on in a particular way, to a cricket fan, he's like, oh my God, why would he try and hit a 6 into the wind off Nathan Lyon?
Yep.
Right. In KP's mind, he's like, if I hit this 6 into the wind, they'll be like, they're not going to feel comfortable bowling him at either end.
Yeah.
Right. I'm facing a 90-mile. I remember him facing Billy Stanley. And, you know, I still say on pure tools alone, Billy Stanley should be one of the best players in the world, but he hasn't been able to put it together. Yeah. But when he was fully fit and firing, he was bowling, I don't know, low 90s at 6'8", 6'9", whatever, however tall he is. And KP was finished by this point, right? KP was like in the last year and a half of his career. And KP took him on first ball over mid-off. Just got away with it. It completely played with Stan Lake's mind, right? Yeah. Now, I knew that KP was only doing that to get that advantage, knowing that Stan Lake would now not just come in and whack the ball in on a length outside off stump anymore, right? Yeah. Stan Lake didn't get that. That's using data. That's knowing that if I hit the ball here, I will affect the field in this way. And I'll be able to do that. Most of the great players have that. Some of them just have physical advantages, right? Morne Morkel is probably a perfect example of a player who had so many physical advantages over everyone else that he probably never refined his game as much as he could have, and maybe didn't think about bowling as much as he could have because he was 6'8" and he bowled 90 miles an hour. Yeah. Right. He didn't have to think the way that, Kemar Roach had to think about his game, right? Kemar Roach wouldn't be around. He's 5'2", right? It might be 5'8". Yeah. He's short. He's short. Yeah. Right. Kemar Roach has to be an absolute master with the ball to survive, right? Yep. So these players, most of them have that data within them. And one thing I really learned, there's a really good video of LeBron James. Now, LeBron James physically is one of the best specimens that's ever played any sport ever. Yeah. But when you listen to him talk about basketball, there was a particular play that Cleveland lost a game. And he was asked why he passed the ball to Kyle Korver. He takes them through. Exactly. Yeah. He said exactly where every player was, what the switch, who had switched, who had moved, who was slow to move. Dhoni has that brain. Right? Yeah. Kieron Pollard has that brain. Dwayne Bravo, not so much Darren Bravo. Yeah. Dwayne Bravo has that brain, right? AB de Villiers has that brain, right? Yeah. And a lot of players do. Even lower end players, someone like Darren Stevens, who's 58 years old and still dominating county cricket. There's a reason why he's doing that. His ability to think. Yeah. They have that. We haven't even got close to getting that out of them. And so when they say to me, oh, you want to run it by the laptop? And I'm like, no, I want to download what you have into the laptop so that we can make these numbers make even more sense. Right. Yeah. And so, I'm very good friends with Gareth Batty, who's now the head coach at Surrey. He's not a big fan of analysis, right? Because he's 100 years old, right? And he was playing professional cricket in the 90s and playing professional cricket in the 2020s, right? Yeah. He played over 4 decades, right? Yeah. He was around before the word analysis existed. Yeah. And what was great to be able to work with him is to be able to say to him, hey, I found this pattern. And for him to be able to go, oh, yeah, that's probably because of this. And then I can go off and relook at that. That's what you're looking for. You're looking at matching those two things together. And the big thing with analysis in America is that they're trying to train former players to do it because the players have these sorts of thinking already, right? And you match that with it. And I think for me, what happened was that Moneyball obviously needed to happen. Yeah. But Moneyball was a very, what's the best way of putting it? It's a very small window into how we can fix things. And it's also very negative. This player can't do that. We must now get rid of this player and get another player who can do that, right? And the next generation of baseball, but we've also seen it in basketball. And I think we're hopefully starting to see it in cricket as well. Okay, this player can't do that. Can we make them do it? Right. And if you follow one player. Yeah. And if you look at someone like Andy Flower, his big thing with the England team was if you were strong at something, how to make that your super strength. Yeah. That's basically what they now do in baseball. But Andy Flower was kind of in thinking ahead of the game, whether he did it with the coaching techniques and everything else. But then the next thing is, okay, if you're Tymal Mills and you can bowl at 95 miles an hour with your left arm and you can bowl a back of the hand slower ball that people still have trouble with. Yeah. Is there a way to get you one other ball? Yep. Yeah. Right. Because his cutter's never been that good. right? He can't bowl a knuckleball because his hands are small. Sorry, Tymal, but you told me that, and I'm going to tell the world. Right? Is there another ball that we could teach him?
Yep.
That will allow him to just be able to switch it up a little bit against players who are on top, right? We don't want that third ball to be a specialist ball, but his cutter doesn't really work that well. Sorry again. Is there a third ball? And we already know that he's doing great. And it's those little things that we can start to teach things. And there are huge problems within cricket when you talk about left-handers.
Yeah.
So for instance, off spinners are like the cockroach of cricket, right? They shouldn't exist because they're spinning the ball back into right-handers and it doesn't make any sense. Right? We can everyone in club cricket is humped the ball over mid-wicket off an off-spinner without too much trouble, even good off-spinners, right?
Yeah.
The reason off-spinners are so good is because their ability to adapt and to learn how to bowl to right-handers and their ability to do subtle changes. Yeah. Left-arm finger spinners do none of that. They literally just go boing, 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 and that's a big growth area, right? Yeah. You could start an academy for left-arm finger spinners and be like, all we're going to do is get you to bowl against left-handers. We know you can bowl against right-handers. Yeah. You've got a natural advantage here, right? Yeah. For the next 2 months, you're only going to bowl to left-handers, right? You get someone like Mitch Santner to come out who's better against left-handers than right-handers, which is why he has a career. Yeah. Right. And you get him to explain it. And then you get a few of the other guys and their tricks, whatever. This is a huge growth area. Again, what you're doing is I have the data. It was actually Gareth Batty who came to me who said, do you think off spinners are better than left armers? And I said, yes. He goes, I'm so glad you told me that. And I went through it. And then I said, and this is why, now I've got his brain engaged. Yeah. So when he goes back to talk to the spinners, all these things are possible, right? You need both levels of this, but you do need the other level. I need to be able to say to someone. So for instance, I was talking to Matt Pryor recently because we were on Talk Sport together, and we were talking about the off-stump guard that everyone hates, that all the England players are going with. Yeah. And I said, I understand why you think it's wrong, but can I explain to you what's different about cricket now than when you were good at it? Yep. And I said, when you were good at it, bowlers were coming close to the stumps. They were bowling just outside off stump and the ball was going through outside off stump. Yeah. Now they're coming wider of the stump. They're angling in and you've got the wobble ball. Yeah. Right? In one conversation, me and him worked out probably a better technique than what the England players are currently trying to do, which was his simple thing was, okay, you need to protect that off stump a little bit more. Do it with your back leg, not your front leg. Because once you do it with your front leg, once that ball goes inside your eye line, you're going to miss it.
So a little side on guard.
Yeah.
So it's almost like if you would have his theory would be, it's almost like facing a left arm bowler. You'll open up. So that your leg is facing your front leg is facing the non-striker. So it's at middle or even leg stump. Yeah. But your back foot is in front of off stump.
Off stump. Okay.
And so when the ball is coming back into you like that from this new angle with the wobble ball, you're still playing it straight. Yeah. You're not playing across the front of your pad. And then if the ball goes away, you've covered your off stump, hopefully. Yeah. Right. You might play and miss more, but it actually, because of the way that you're opening up, you're not actually with your head outside the line trying to play a ball out here. Sorry, the microphone's over here, isn't it? Anyway, the point is it took my data and my research and his knowledge together. These aren't, do you know what I mean? And someone like MS Dhoni has that kind of a brain naturally. Most players don't. Most players understand their part in the game. And they'll say that all the time. You get players saying, I remember a young player, I won't name him because it's a bit embarrassing for him, him just looking at other players and just saying, why won't they hit that for six? And me having to say to him, because they don't have that skill. Oh. That's not their skill. That's your skill. Yeah. I said, if you're ever going to be a captain, you have to understand you saying to them, just hit that for six. It's not going to help them. What you should be saying is you're not opening up to play your best shots here. Yeah. Right. Or you're not disrupting the bowler so they can keep bowling their best ball or whatever it should be. But the thing should never be, why aren't you hitting that for six? Because that's your skill. Right. Yeah. And you get that a lot with captains. They know what they know. Yeah. And it's very hard for them to understand what this player does well and what this player does well because they know what they know.
They know it,
Yep.
That's a very long answer to the question that I've asked.
So on analysts, let's get to our favorite analyst, Dan Weston. Everyone's talking about the strategy with Punjab Kings. You did a Red Inker podcast with him last week.
Yeah. So what are your views on the Punjab Kings, also in the Birmingham Phoenix, their strategy on T20 cricket almost, right? Where they pack their team with power hitters. And it's kind of working for Punjab, it's kind of not, but that's the risk you take.
Disclaimer, we are massive fans of the strategy. T20 is meant for fun, entertaining viewing, and this is what it does, and it maximizes your wickets and maximizes your balls.
Yeah.
So we're massive fans.
I don't think they've got a very good team. So
Yeah.
I think that it will look like a failure if they don't make the finals, but I don't think it is a failure. We've seen it. I think the first team who ever did it was the Jamaica Telewallers a couple of years ago.
Okay.
They had, did they have, I'm trying to think who they had, Lewis, not Evan Lewis, the other Lewis. They had Andre Russell. They might have still have Rovman at the time. They had Asif Ali. So we've seen teams try it before.
Yeah.
They had a massive failure with it. I think their biggest problem was from memory that they didn't have many people who could hit spin. So teams were just loading up against them with spin. Birmingham, obviously, I thought did, very, very well.
Yep.
Look, I think if you talk to most analysts, this is what most of us would try and do. Generally, we are handcuffed by old cricket logic.
Yep.
The teams that are put together are not all, in Dan's case, and he might have a big part of this, or he might not have. It might have just been that the team was involved in it.
Yeah.
When there's lots of us who have similar theories to this, but our teams don't work.
Yeah.
Right. So we could have done it at St Lucia.
Yep.
We had Dre Ross, Warner, Rakeem Cornwall, Pollard, Darren Sammy.
Could have worked.
Another big.
Could have worked.
I'm trying to think if we have one other player that did it as well. But the problem was that Andre Fletcher, once he gets past the quick bowlers, slows down naturally.
Yep.
David Warner went through a huge form problem.
Yeah.
Darren Sammy never made a run. We had the lineup to do it.
Yeah.
And it didn't happen.
It
right.
Didn't follow through with it. Yeah.
Now, the exact same thing could happen to Punjab.
Yeah.
Right. They've got the lineup to do it.
Yeah.
And until someone does it, I don't think everyone's going to back it. But look, everyone's done the numbers. It doesn't make sense. Who was it the other day that were like 2 or 3 down for 170? And
Delhi.
That's the worst score. Was it? That's the worst score line you can have. Right? Because that just tells you you're
just knocking
it around.
It doesn't make any sense to be playing like that. And too many teams do that. And the average in runs per wicket in T20 is going up. And I'm like, it should be going down. Right? It should be going the other direction. And you really want to use the most of your resources. And you've only got 2 resources, wickets and balls. Look, I think Punjab, I don't think it will be successful because I don't think their team's very good. I don't think it won't be successful because it's not a good idea. I think Birmingham was probably a better team, and we've seen other teams think about doing it before or go half in. I think Brisbane Heat was a team that probably went half in. My problem looking at Punjab, they played 4 games, haven't they?
2 wins.
And I don't think, where did I have them? I think I had them 7th on my power list. And if I remember correctly, they can't bowl.
They genuinely can't.
So I don't know if it will work, but if you're asking me as a general theory, I mean, Diane's not saying anything that Kartikeya Date hasn't said, that I haven't said, that half the analysts I'm sure if you talk to Nathan Lehman, he probably would like to run a team like that. I mean, it's kind of what England did, right? England battered down to number 9 or number 10. They were probably the first ones to do it. West Indies have tried it and never quite made it work 100%. But even if you have a look at the 2 West Indies teams that won, they kind of had a core of that there. It's just that in the finals, it didn't look like that because they lost a bunch of wickets in both games and slowed down. But if you look at what did they have? They had Carlos Brathwaite at 8 or 9 in the, I think it was 8 in the World Cup final. And they had even longer batting lineups in the last World Cup as well. And it's really been West Indies, England. So England haven't won a World Cup with it, but they won the One Day World Cup with a very similar theory, right? And it makes sense. essentially.
Yeah, it does make sense. In Punjab's case, it may not.
No,
Because...
in Punjab's case, the game it worked perfectly had to be against RCB.
Yeah.
Obviously.
Well, the other thing is that it doesn't have to work this year.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
The first year of the mega auction, you're gonna make mistakes in the mega auction, right? Because of the it's too big an auction. It doesn't make any sense. It's a stupid concept, but we have to do it because we have to keep the talent. Well, eventually going to Mumbai anyway, but we have to keep the talent as even as possible, right?
Yeah.
But from a team building perspective, it's absolute arse, right?
Yeah.
So you're going to make mistakes in the mega auction. Second year, you're going to be trying to recover from them. It's really third and fourth years when you work out what you are. The important thing is, and this is where Punjab have not been very good in the past, is actually coming up with a theory and sticking with it. Right?
Exactly.
And I was briefly involved with the owners of that franchise when I was with they had a team in the European League.
Oh, wow. Man.
I was not filled with confidence, if I'm being completely honest. When Dan was going there, I was like, this will be interesting.
This could be fun.
I felt like they'd listened to me, but their original ideas were so bad that I spent most of my time trying to talk them out of the bad ideas. And so that's where I worry about it. It's the third and fourth year. But look, on a very basic level, what you really want is a bunch of people. You probably want 8 players who can average all combined around, 25 to 30. And strike at 140 plus. It's a much better way of doing things. And if you have an anchor, you want them to be a floating anchor anyway, right? Someone like Ashwin or Benny Howe at Punjab would be really good at this if they get him into the side. Is you don't want Ashwin, Benny Howe or Mike Yardy when he played for England to actually bat in your top 6 ever.
Exactly.
Unless
I think that's a
wrong.
brilliant take. Move on to our next question. Ashwin came as an anchor, then he retired hurt. I think brilliant.
Retired out. He retired out, not retired.
Retired out. My bad.
Yeah.
But I think they should start looking at anchor roles as that. You come, bat for 20 balls, wickets have fallen, stabilize the innings, get out of here. Get out of here.
So I talked to the Australian setup about Steve Smith, and he wanted to bat 3, and I was like, well, it doesn't make any sense because his main skill is facing spin, so he should be batting at 4 to begin with. And I said, but there should be whole games where he doesn't bat. And they were like, oh, we can't sell that to him. And I was like, well, that's fine, but if you're asking me how to maximize your batting lineup, it's not by Steve Smith coming in the 12th over. Right? It doesn't make any sense to be able to do that. Well, what you really want with Steve Smith is Shaheen Afridi's taken 2 wickets in the first over. You want Steve Smith in. Right? And it's the same with Kane Williamson, a very similar kind of role, a very similar kind of player. And I think that what has happened is because these players have come from being the stars, they don't understand that they're no longer the stars in this format.
You will never get.
And that was the big thing.
Batting. Like he will.
Yeah, and so Steve, exactly, And Steve Smith's like, I'm at number 3. I should bat at number 3. Weirdly enough, he's batting at number 4 in the Test team now. But it's like, no, there is no number 3. Right. In T20 cricket, it depends on the situation. And there might be 3 games in a row where he's the most important player in your team. And there might be 3 games in a row where you would throw in Pat Cummins and Mitchell Stark ahead of him. Right. Those are perfectly normal things to be able to do. And I don't think at the moment players are thinking that way because they haven't quite got their head around T20 cricket. Now, it's no surprise that Ashwin was available to be retired out. I would be shocked if other players haven't been asked to retire out before and said no. I'd be shocked if it hasn't come very close and then everyone's felt a bit uncomfortable with it. But of course, Ashwin, who looks at the game in an intelligent way rather than, his role in it, was willing to do that. Also, Ashwin, there's no reason for him to ever bat unless you're losing wickets, as you said, unless there is that clatter of wickets. And Benny Howe, Mike Yardy, there's heaps of guys out there. Like even someone like Chris Jordan for years. Chris Jordan has changed his game in the last year and a half. He started hitting 6s. For years, Chris Jordan was a career 120 strike rate guy and would only bat in the death. I'm like, well, what's the point of that? If he's only going to hit at 120 when batting in the death, then he's absolutely useless to your team. Right? But Chris Jordan can bat. Right? He's got a high front elbow. He's got a good technique. It's like, okay, so we've lost 2 wickets in the power play. CJ, do you want to go in up in early and just knock the ball around for us? Right? And then you don't have to even retire him out. You can just say to him after a while, when the spinners come on and you start to bat into the 8th over, we want you to try and hit every ball for 6. If he goes out, he goes out, right?
That's what
those sorts of players have huge value.
Yep.
And we're not maximizing the value. And that's what T20 cricket should be. It should be about maximizing each player's value.
These are like sort of pinch anchors. You made a video about pinch hitters.
Yeah.
So
I actually made a video about pinch blockers if you go back far enough.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, so Ireland have started using a guy called Andy Balbirnie. Andy Balbirnie is their captain. Andy McBride as a pinch blocker. Because they realized that they didn't have enough strong batters to stretch out their lineup to 7 or 8 players. And so they basically brought their number 8 up the order.
Yep.
And just said to him, just knock the ball around. If you make 30 or 40 every second game, it means our batting lineup will be longer and we can attack around you. Right. And Andy McBride is not a particularly good batter, but he's also not particularly easy to get out.
Yeah.
Right. So if he makes 30 or 40 every game and allows the other young players and Andy Balbirnie and these guys to smash the ball around him, or Paul Sterling to smash the ball around him, it means their batting lineup's longer. Andy McBride coming in at number 8 is fucking useless because he can't hit the ball off a square. Right?
What's the point of
he can't hit boundaries? Yeah. So if you're going to get anything out of him, it's going to have to be up the order. It probably won't work because he's so limited. Eventually, teams are just going to hit him in the head. He's already been hit in the head a lot because he's not. If he was a better batter, he'd be up the order. But in a limited situation, you can use that. Ashwin's role is very similar to that. But I'd probably say Ashwin's role is more like the floating anchor that I wrote about a long time ago, which is like, your anchor shouldn't just come in as an opener or as a number 4. Your anchor should come in if and when you need them.
SRH.
He doesn't need to open. He needs to come in when they're 2 down for 10. That's when you want Kane Williamson at the crease, right? And then also guys like Kane Williamson and Steve Smith and Joe Root would be another perfect version of this. You can actually use them in a secondary role as well. I remember there was a year when Chris Gale, Virat Kohli and AB were all together at RCB, and RCB had Sachin Baby. Now they knew that Sachin Baby wasn't. It was a 2016. They knew he wasn't a superstar, right? But they knew a couple of things about him. One, he was very good at getting singles, and 2, he was a very fast runner. And their whole theory was if he can get a better player back on strike at the end, that's still quite a handy thing for us to have. Kane Williamson, Steve Smith, Joe Root, all those players again can play that role, and they're going to be a lot better at it than Sachin Baby because on top of that, they can hit 4s and 6s, right? They can manipulate the field.
To finish in the 2016 IPL final. It didn't happen.
Yeah, because he was a limited player, right?
Exactly.
And that's not having a go at him. They knew what he was, and they went down that path anyway. But the point is, when you look at all this, is there are many different roles for these players. But they're not taking those roles specifically. And you look at someone like Kieron Pollard, like we had to drag him to bat at number 4, right? And outside the IPL, I mean, if there's a league with too many leg spinners, he's probably not an ideal number 4, right? Because he starts so bad against leg spin. But in leagues where there's just a normal amount of leg spinners, it's like Kieron Pollard is a number 4. But he was so used to being told he was the finisher and the closer and all this sort of stuff. And it's like, but you're our best player. We need you to face this many balls a game, not this many balls a game, right?
Well, that's an interesting view because we've been very critical about Hardik Pandya at 4, but that's sort of the similar theory. You want your best hitters
coming up and saying that Hardik Pandya is your best hitter. You should not be playing him at number 4, but that kind of goes against what you've been saying of having Pollard or a player like that at number 4.
It depends on what they can do, what they can hit. Pollard is a Trini boy. He's a brilliant player of spin. It doesn't pick leg spin very well, especially early on in his time. But his actual record against leg spin isn't that bad. He just goes out first ball to it a lot, second ball and third ball to it a lot. Afterwards, he's fine. Once he gets his feet moving, he just gets trapped on the crease when he gets out there. But he's a brilliant player of finger spin. Right? I don't think Hardik is that. That's when you want them to be held back a little bit later, perhaps. I could be wrong. I'd have to have a look at Hardik's numbers, but my memory of Hardik's numbers. So Jadeja is a perfect example of as good as Jadeja can average 60 in the IPL, and I still wouldn't bat him earlier than the 12th over. Because if he comes in earlier than the 12th over, he just will not hit the spinners off the square, and you're just wasting balls that you could throw up any random all-rounder. You could throw up Harshal Patel and just say to Harshal, look, try and hit a couple of 6s here and get us a bumper, right? I'm more talking Team India there than because they're from 2 different sides. But I'm thinking of a random person who might be able to do that kind of role. And so in that particular case, what you have to be able to do is work out how the player will best fit. So AB de Villiers was not a particularly strong starter against spin.
Yeah.
Right. So you really want him to come in between the 10th and the 14th over to completely maximize what he does. So then you have to match him with someone who is a good starter against spin. So the combination of him and Maxwell was perfect. Right.
Exactly.
And that's where teams are starting to get better. If you have a look at the bowling constructions, they're starting to work all this out.
Yeah.
Which is, okay, we need this and this, and we need this and this. It hasn't quite worked as much with the batting. Partly because I think there are more big name, respectable Indian batters out there that cause problems.
Yeah, exactly. I think the point of the ego is in how players don't want to bat in those desired positions.
Exactly. You know, Shikhar Dhawan for me is one of the most interesting players ever in the IPL because he was absolutely ordinary for so long until people stopped paying him.
Yeah, exactly. When he came to Delhi, he took it personally and
just
changed his game completely.
So we know he could do that.
Exactly.
So what the fuck was he doing for those years before, right? Now, that's a normal thing that happens in professional sport. But he shouldn't have been kept getting paid for something he'd never done.
Yeah.
Right? If he was a bowler, an Indian bowler, forget about it.
Exactly.
Ishant Sharma couldn't get a gig, was on the bench. Umesh Yadav has been in and out the sides. Mohammad Shami almost lost an IPL career about 3 times, right?
Exactly.
Shikhar Dhawan was fucking still opening the batting all the time and doing nothing with it, right?
Yeah.
So we know that there's a special reverence for those Indian batters. And that's why I think maybe the batting lineups are at times not as advanced as the bowling one is, because there are very few bowlers with the big ego and the big reputations who you can't just, you know, like if maybe Ishant's the wrong case, but if Mohammad Shami can be used off the bench and be told that he's no good and you know, bounce around different franchises, I think we realize that the bowlers are much more interchangeable and the batters haven't been so far. And I think that looking at the bowling lineups, having a look at them yesterday for the power rankings I did, I kind of felt like, I remember, you know, there's a couple of teams who after the mega auction reached out to me and said, look, just have a look at this. What do you think? And I was like, yeah, I see the patterns that you can build with this. Yeah. If you look at even last year, there were some teams where I was like, where's the pattern? What's your strength?
What are you doing?
Yeah. Well, you've got bowlers, but where are they going to be good as a unit together? And you need to be able to, you need to be the team that takes a bunch of wickets in the power play, the team that clamps down the middle, or the team that can slow anyone down at the death. You need a combination, and it needs to be combos, right? Jasprit Bumrah can't do it on his own. Rashid Khan can almost do it on his own and even not do it on his own, right? Shaheen Afridi for Pakistan can't do it on his own. They need that combination. So if you can go 1-2, then you've got a much better a lineup to be able to do that with.
So all I'm going to say is what we've said in this episode, there are a lot of things Sunil Gavaskar wouldn't be happy with. And that's always a good sign. That means they're talking sense.
He's a big fan of your podcast. He was telling me the other day.
You talked to him? We didn't say anything wrong about Sunil Gavaskar.
I literally haven't talked to him and he literally never mentioned the podcast. But it would be funny.
We spent a good 3 minutes of the last episode talking about how his philosophy is wrong and about how his commentary is hit a 6 and then run 1.
It's horrible.
See, the thing about Sunil Gavaskar is that he said something, might have been in a test match recently, and I wish I'd written it down because I could have written a whole piece on it. And there was so much genius in what he said. And you think the reason Sunil Gavaskar is not a good commentator and the reason that so many of them are not good commentators is not because they don't know the game. It's because they don't continue to watch it. They don't continue to grow with it. They don't continue to do the research. But most importantly, they don't have producers. He's not there because he's good at any of those things, right? He's there because he's Sunil Gavaskar, right? And I remember talking to the Channel 9 guys about how, so Channel 9 commentary went from here to the basement. Okay. Right. And they said, they told me, they were clear as day. They said, we had really good production and then we had no production. Right. If you come off air and it doesn't matter if you're Ian Chappell or Tony Greig or Richie Benaud and the producer said to you, what the hell was that? You didn't even sound like you like cricket in that last thing. You didn't add anything to the game. You're like, okay, that's fair. Who's saying that to Sunil Gavaskar?
No,
right? And it's not just him, it's all of them. They don't train TV commentators anymore. Radio commentators in some markets get a little bit more help, but they throw people in and then hope that they're going to be good commentators when they've never even commentated before, or they've been saying the same shit commentary for generations. And it's so I don't blame the people involved, because if the people hiring them don't actually put any proper constraints on them and don't try and make them any better, they are what they are. And there is no doubt that Sono Gavaskar still has a brilliant cricket mind, but the commentary is not matching that, and that's shit. And commentary should be better.
Yep.
Yeah.
All right, so last statement of the day. We want you to repeat this line after us, okay? Out loud, so we can clip Jarrod Kimber saying this. RCB.
You both have big penises. Oh, sorry. Go.
Also that, but that's for later.
That's for later. RCB are going to win the IPL this year. Just do that one sentence.
RCB are going to win the IPL at one stage in.
No. We've waited 14 years already.
I think in the next 50 years, RCB will certainly win something.
Sure.
If we don't, at that point, we should retire as a franchise. I've grown up watching RCB lose. I can't have it happen for more years.
We made a song about our kit. Which other team can make a song about our kit? It's incredible.
Yeah, you also have an international criminal as your owner for a while. So, I mean, it's been a wild ride, hasn't it? If we're being honest.
As an RCB fan, that's the least we expect. Just give us a good time. It's okay. Results secondary. Just give us a good time and we'll be happy.
King of good times.
Yeah. It's you got a good kit this year. What more do you want, really?
Yeah, exactly. We both bought the kit.
Yeah,
life is good. Anyway, thank you so much for your time. Thank you for joining us.
We're absolutely ecstatic. I haven't stopped smiling this episode.
Except the bit where you crashed the computer.
That never happened. I don't know which computer we're talking about.
My head was in my hands. I was like, I cannot believe what I've just done. Like, I've made him wait.
For what is worth,
it was okay. I didn't have a drink bottle and it allowed me to go get my drink. So we're all cool.
For what is worth, we've had 2 guests now
cancelled on us
at the last minute. So we had Julian Wood from Punjab, but what turned out was the IPL PR team said that you can't do interviews outside
like
your
an IPL partner
or something.
Yeah, and we got the message after, because of his schedule, we had to do it in the morning. So we waited till the morning. We missed the first few classes of school, and he didn't show up.
Yeah, and we got to see the mail later, and very fun times.
So we were kind of prepared that, okay, if this also doesn't go well, what can we do? Because we've been let down a few times.
I'm pretty sure this episode didn't go well, but good luck with everything in the future. I've got to go off and do one of my podcasts now, but pleasure and good luck with it all, guys.
Thank you for joining us.
Thank you for joining us.
Thank you for joining us.
Have a good one. Bye.
Thank you.